Hi, this is Dale Haight, Dr. Dale Haight. Dr. Dale on Deck is the channel we'll be airing this on. This is Melissa, my Melissa. Isn't she great? Most of you know her from her YouTube Scentsy fame, and many of you do, and I'm so glad that you do. We got to talking about it the other day and got to thinking about, I've been doing this, I've only done a couple of programs on my channel right now on Dr. Dale on Deck, and what we've been doing is just kind of covering some different biblical subjects and whatnot. But quite often here at home we have discussions and conversation that's around various themes that have a biblical origin. And we just got to talking about some things the other day, and Melissa suggested, hey, maybe we should just turn the camera on when we're having those talks. So it'll feel a little bit staged because we're staging it, but we don't necessarily want it to feel that way. And hopefully we'll get the hang of this and be able to do this more like a talk show kind of format. Pardon the air conditioner that will come on now and then, but again, you watch her YouTube channel and you're used to those kinds of things. And if a cat comes walking across the table, that's because that's what happens in our house. He's upstairs sleeping, I think, right now. We were talking, well, anyways, you guys say what you normally say. Oh, is that patented just for your YouTube? You're not allowed to do that unless you're doing sensing? Huh. Yeah, see, I don't know if they'll recognize you if you don't say, hey guys. I love it. That's a really nice thing she does. So we got talking about, how did all this happen? We got talking about Isaiah. You had questions about some things in Isaiah.
I asked you what the verse was, like, no weapons formed against me shall prosper. And you said there's more to it. I wanted to know who wrote the book, what the history was behind the book.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that stuff.
So Isaiah was a prophet in the Old Testament. Most people know that. It's what we call one of the major prophets. Now, there are two kinds of prophets in the Old Testament that we have writings from, and this is in both the Hebrew and the Christian Bibles. So Isaiah was one of the major prophets. Difference between a major and a minor prophet is the minor prophets are short books and major prophets are long books. It has nothing to do with their importance. So if you read the little book of Amos, you're talking about just as important a prophet, Obadiah, any of the others, just as important a prophet as Isaiah and Ezekiel and Jeremiah and some of the lengthier ones, and that's really what determines that. Now, when was Isaiah around? Isaiah was around during around approximately 750 BC, so before Jesus was on the earth. Isaiah was around, and Isaiah was respected and regarded by the tribe of Judah, particularly as a prophet. Now, during this period of time, just so you understand it, there was a divided kingdom. So you had Israel on one hand, and these are all people from the same bloodline. So you had Israel on one hand, and you had Judah on the other. Okay, so Israel comprised many of the tribes, and then there was little Judah here. Now, what's significant about Judah? Maybe people need to know that, right? What's significant about Judah? So when we think about Judah, first of all, the word Judah means praise. That to me is really significant. It's because it deals with the worship of God and so forth. So the tribe of Judah, praise, okay? But there is a lineage that comes from. Oh.
He's looking at the crap.
There's a lineage that comes from Judah, and we know his name, and that's Jesus Christ. So Jesus comes from that, through that bloodline, and in the book of Revelation is referred to as the Lion of the tribe of Judah. So that's how we get that. So Isaiah was, in the 700s BC. He was prophesying concerning the evil aspects of Israel and how they'd set themselves up at that point in time, during that period in history, as being divided from Judah. Now remember, these are all the people of God. Now, oftentimes we see division between what we now know is the Arabic nations, those that descended from Ishmael. So do we need to do that too? We have, just in case you don't know about that, you know the name Abraham or Abram. Abraham and Sarah, who was his wife, couldn't have any children. They were quite old. And so Abraham made the really goofy move. I'm sorry to be so theological, but that's what it was. It was the goofy move of having a child outside of the marriage.
That was her idea, wasn't it?
Yeah, she came up with it. Sarah.
It wasn't. Don't blame him.
Well, I still think that he had, obviously, he's a guy, right?
She didn't think she could have kids.
Right, and
So
she
she
hadn't
was-
any. She kept saying to God, I'm not having kids. And God says, be patient. We're going to deal with that. Everything's going to happen at the right time. And she got impatient with God. And then she said, hey, look at my handmaiden. Now, no offense, but the reality is you can't tell a guy who wants to have a child, look at my handmaiden, right? I mean, really, seriously. So he did more than look at her. And they ended up with a child. That would be Hagar. Sorry. But Hagar and Abram had a child together, and his name was Ishmael. And after Ishmael was born, then Sarah found herself to be pregnant from Abraham herself, and she gave birth to Isaac. So you'll hear different people say, well, from the tribes, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay, so Isaac, their son, had a child, Jacob. Anyways, you can go down through all of those things. But what happens with this nation, this God nation, if you will, is that it becomes divisive and divided by following after various people, kings and whatnot. And it's a long, long history, and not going to go into that right now. But we see Isaiah making these prophetic statements that deal with the people of Judah and offering them some hope and offering them some guidance and some strength. And when these wars start to break out between these people, they can get pretty crazy and very difficult. And Isaiah 55 is really dealing with the issue of judgment, how God wants to remove judgment from these nations and actually bless them as a people, because there are real enemies outside of the gate that want to destroy them. And so God says, no, I don't want you to be this way. I don't want you to be at each other's throats all the time. I want you to have peace in your life, and I'm going to provide that for you. So you were asking me about the verses,
no weapons.
no weapon formed against you shall prosper.
I just wondered what the history
Yeah,
was behind
and
it.
so really in Isaiah 54, throughout all of that chapter, and go ahead.
I just want to say, because you know the context of it, whereas anyone can read it and take it out of context. I was looking for the historical context.
Yeah, so there's the context of it. Now, but the promises that God gives start way back before, okay? And I'm not going to read all of this, but I do want to read some of it just to give the context. I want to make sure that you understand that from my perspective, historic context, grammatic context, all of these things are very important in interpreting the Bible or any other literature surrounding those times, as well as anything that you might read today that's modern or contemporary. And as soon as you start to pull things out of their context and make them apply to you in different ways, it's not that God can't take verses and apply them to your life. That's fine, but when you lift something from its context in order to make it say what you want it to say, that's where the problem comes. We're not doing that with this. We're going to keep it in its context. So let me just read a little bit of this to you. Where do I want to start? Again, this is through the prophet, God speaking. I'm going to start back at verse 11 of Isaiah 54. O afflicted one, storm-tossed and not comforted, behold, I will set your stones in antimony. Now remember, we talked about this in our conversation last night. Antimony. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's like a, what did you call it? Pyrite, or like a fool's gold kind of thing? Or
You said it was like fool's gold, but it was silver, and I said pyrite, which I like gemstones. So pyrite is what they make graphite pencils out of.
Ah. What I discovered too when I was looking up that word, because I don't know why I've never really noticed or paid much attention to that word, but it is actually a chemical component, and it's been boiled down to be a part of, and you can see it in its name, of course.
You said every translation uses that word.
Yeah, as I'm looking through the English translations, they all use that word, so there's some significance to that. But it is a chemical component that is used in atomic energy today, which is interesting to me. So I'm not a scientist, so it's difficult. But yeah, you can actually show them a picture of
You.
you. Let's get a big picture up. Can we do that? Okay, so this is what it looks like, if you can see that. I don't know if you can or not. I think the camera's on the other side, right? Yeah, there you go. Yeah, a little less glare that way. So you can see it. So I think you're familiar with that because most people have seen that before, but I just find it very interesting, the descriptions of that as it relates to the chemical. Antimony, that's how you say it. Antimony is a chemical element with the symbol SB and atomic number 51, a lustrous gray metalloid. It is found in nature mainly as the sulfide mineral stibnite. Its compounds have been known since ancient times and were powdered for use as medicine and cosmetics, often known by the Arabic name, interesting, kohl, but spelled K-O-H-L. Okay, so what was that? Toxicity occurs either due to occupational exposure or during therapy when it's used. So I think this might have something to do with x-rays or something like that. It might. I don't know. But not to get too bogged down, it was an interesting thing that it became a setting, that they would have related to, that God would have said, I'm going to do this for you, and I'm going to make your, I'm going to set your stones. And these are a lot of metaphoric terms that are being used here. This isn't literal, but he's saying, I'm gonna make you look good. I'm gonna make you be solid. I'm gonna give you power and might. I'm gonna build your foundations. Okay.
That's why the toxicity, lead.
Oh, because of the lead. Okay. All right, because of the lead content.
Lead.
So if you all know this stuff already about this, don't laugh at us because we're trying to figure out what it is as we go. But that's
China's the largest producer of
Really?
whatever.
Yeah, I know. Antimony.
Yeah. That. Oh, look, down in Hunan.
Huh?
Hunan.
Oh, great. In Hunan province, there's antimony. Well, we'll move on to the next subject. Okay, so all of these things are God saying, listen, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to make things precious. All of your sons will be taught of the Lord. Very good promise. And the well-being of your sons will be great. In righteousness you will be established. You will be far from oppression. You will not fear and from terror, for it will not come near you. Okay, so I'm going to drive anything that is terrifying to you away. You're going to kind of boil this down to a way of understanding it. Whoever assails you will fall because of you. Behold, I myself have created the smith who blows the fire of coals and brings out a weapon for its work. And I have created the destroyer to ruin, so that no weapon that is formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that accuses you in judgment you will condemn. This is, now watch this, this really jumped out at me. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their vindication is from me, declares the Lord. What is the heritage of the servants of the Lord? All of this preciousness, all of this protection, all of this victory, all of this being solid, and I just absolutely love that. Now, something that you may not know. In its original form, the Bible doesn't have chapters and verses. It doesn't have any numbers. Okay, there's not like a big 55 next in the next verse with a 1 and 2, 3, 4. None of those. That didn't exist. It was just all a writing. It was just scripted right out. Sometimes when because we're humans and we do all of this interpretation of things, we put the quotation marks and the periods and the apostrophes and the exclamation points and things like that, trying to best understand, especially in an English translation, what the book is actually saying. So when you come to the end of a chapter, it may not really be meant to be an end of a chapter. Some human person, that's kind of a strange term, a human person, I guess that's what every person would be human, right? Made a decision about something.
Well, I'm not sure that you answered my question. I still don't know how these scriptures came, like what is leading up to this?
Well, as I
These
said,
verses.
historically, the book of Isaiah is dealing with Israel, Judah, and the whole thing about their opposition, which was the Babylonians, the Assyrians. Excuse me one second here. Turn that off. Okay. And all of their enemies. So Babylon, for an example, modern day Iraq, and those areas, they were coming against the people of God. And God was just saying through the prophet Isaiah, I'm going to deal with all this for you.
So the whole book is
When it
about
comes-
that?
The whole book, well, the whole book in its original understanding would be about that. Now, something important. Old Testament prophets, very, very important that you understand this. Here's number one, they had to be accurate, okay? Their prophecies and their statements had to be verified, confirmed, affirmed, because here's what the law required. The law required that their prophecies be accurate or that the prophet be stoned to death. Now that's a penalty for being a false prophet. So when you see these prophets that came out and they did this and they spoke these things, then these prophecies deal with a lot of things. Now, what you have to understand about a lot of Old Testament prophecy is there was a near future understanding of fulfillment. In other words, there'd be a near future fulfillment, and then there would be a far future fulfillment. So the prophet would be prophesying about maybe even things they might have some understanding of, like in the near future this is going to happen. But then there would be things spoken that would be far off. If you go back a couple of chapters to, or a chapter back to 53, we know that Isaiah 53 had a near understanding of victorious words to the people of God. But at the same time, they were prophecies concerning a coming Messiah. Now, as followers of Christ, we look at those verses and we very clearly see a depiction of the suffering, the death, the burial, and the resurrection of Jesus enumerated in Isaiah 53. This is the place where you find these things.
Translation are you reading?
This is the New American Standard Bible. The Bible that I use for most of my study, because I believe it is the most accurate translation from original languages, the NASB. I see it says booty. Well, we'll get to that. You keep jumping around here. We're going to talk about booty tonight here as it relates to the Bible. Sorry, kids. But Isaiah 50, you're so funny. Isaiah
I've never
50,
seen a Bible say booty
I know,
before.
there's all kinds of things you're going to see as we look at these.
I have NIV. Pretty sure the NIV doesn't say booty.
NIV. And some people love that. It's easy to read. Okay, I'm not thrilled about its translation accuracy, but it is a fairly accurate translation into English. I'm not really that thrilled about any English translations, quite frankly, because they all contain a bias from English-speaking people, and that is a part of what happened with the westernization of the Christian faith and other Near Eastern faiths. And that meant that they were tailor-made for the Western culture. Enough of that. I deal with that more on my regular show. Chapter 53, though, deals with Jesus, who has believed our message and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed. For he grew up before him as a tender shoot, and like a root out of parched ground, and has no stately form or majesty that we should look upon him. Jesus was not particularly an attractive man. It was not like the hot I'm sorry, you called him the hot Jesus in the movies. That's so funny. But sorry, I didn't mean to
Certain
embarrass you.
movies, there's a hot Jesus.
Yeah, blue eyes and everything. Okay, and nor an appearance that we should be attracted to him. He was despised and forsaken of men, He was a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, like one from whom men hide their face. He was despised, and we did not esteem him. Surely our griefs he himself bore, our sorrows he carried. Yet ourselves esteemed him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. But he was, watch how this relates to what happened to Jesus on the cross. He was pierced through for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. Yes, and the chastising for our well-being was upon him. And by his scourging, his stripes or his whipping, by his scourging, we are all healed. All of us like if sheep have gone astray. And then it goes into this next thing. It says, listen, we all follow after our own path and everything else, but watch what happened to Jesus. He did all of these things so that even though we go off by ourselves, and we try to do our own thing, and we try to make up our own salvation, can't happen, won't happen. Our righteousness, Isaiah says, is as filthy rags. We can't get good enough for God, so God sent the suffering servant to die on the cross, his own son, Jesus, so that we wouldn't have to pay for our own sins. That's a pretty exciting part of this.
So this is talking about, because this is how I'm relating it. So right now as I'm reading this is when he was on the cross and what he did for us by dying on the cross. Mm-hmm. Then it goes into like a revelation thing?
Well, so the next part of this thing deals with, remember, a near fulfillment, okay? Something that's coming sooner rather than later, deals with the victories over the enemies of Israel and Judah. And then we come into also the far interpretation, and that is that the promise which was made to them is also made to us today. So this doesn't deal specifically with prophecies about the end times, for an example.
No, but do you see that, how it could be taken that way? Like
Sure.
how this is literally when he died on the cross in
Absolutely.
whatever,
Mm-hmm.
the Matthew, Mark, Luke, John.
Mm-hmm.
And then this comes into almost Revelations,
Mm-hmm.
if you read it that way.
Right, and you're going to see that play. What you'll see more of that. You'll see more of that in the books of Daniel, in the book of Ezekiel, and several of the minor prophets as well, where the prophecies deal with a near interpretation of what was going on in their time. For an example. An example. Add that to the dictionary. Where you have a prophecy concerning the people who were in captivity. They were in captivity. We have a little war going on here. But, sorry, the pets.
I'm dog sitting.
But, yeah, we're dog sitting, and they aren't necessarily,
No,
they're
cat
okay.
is fine. The
Yeah.
dog is
not used to having a cat. Yeah. So they're fine, though. Everybody's healthy and good. Or we would go to commercial break. Anyway, just want to say that then you get into the prophecies as they relate to Jesus coming, and then you get into the prophecies as they relate to the last days. So let's get back to the subject at hand.
No, I know. I understand the technicality, but all I'm asking you is to look at that from, I'm sorry, like I think the scriptures, I know the biblical, historical, blah, 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 but I think they can be taken so many ways that you could almost look at that like, wait, here's another way to look at this. Death, Jesus, like the second coming of Christ, right there.
Sure.
Like just by what's being said, it follows Revelation.
That's good. That's not a. I don't know that that's even a misunderstanding. Well, it's actually the book of the Revelation of Jesus Christ to the Apostle John.
Right.
Yeah. Some people call it Revelations, but
That's
it's not technically. That's not what it's called. It's called the Revelation of Jesus Christ to John. Okay. The Apostle John. So, but who cares about all those titles? We know what is at the end of the book, and God wins all of it, no matter what. The devil's a liar, always has been. So let me just say this though: the verses that you had in question, that's very important as it relates to what you're saying right now. Okay, so we know that there will be, in the last days, there will be very, very difficult, or end times, I don't know, I can't remember which one is which, but there's end times and last days. One deals with
We're
the
the
things that
last.
are going on right now.
We could be considered the last.
Okay,
days.
the last days, and then the end times are the things that happen just before the new heaven and the new earth, and everything is changed and turned into what God will do ultimately. But these words, no weapon that is formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that accuses you in judgment you will condemn, and this is the heritage of the servants of the Lord. That is a broader statement, okay, that deals with the servants of the Lord, not meaning professional servants of the Lord. That means, so it's not just priests and prophets, it's everyone who serves the Lord. So the promise that no weapon formed against you shall prosper, how would I want to apply that? Can you think of ways that you'd want to apply that promise, that no weapon that is formed against you shall prosper?
I'm just focused on why it's underlined.
It's just, I started to tell you about my Bible, but it's a Bible that has been underscored in different places and commented on a little bit by an incredible Hebrew and Greek scholar that is no longer with us today. But
Well, and this is why I start to say it sounds like today. For this is like the days of Noah to me. Then I swear that the waters of Noah should. I mean, it almost reads like, and then over here, I have created the destroyer. Could be Satan, the fallen angel to
Right.
ruin. No weapon that is
That's
formed
right.
against you shall prosper.
that's right.
To every that could be considered like.
It absolutely
End
can be.
times.
So again, and this is what
final-
we see.
last days.
There's near future, there is far future. When it comes to Old Testament prophecy, near future, far future. So there's a fulfillment that Daniel had, for an example of Nebuchadnezzar's dream. He actually told him his dream, which nobody else could do. And Daniel was a great character, right? He was a part of the Babylonian captivity. He was in the people of God, and he was captured by Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonian army, and he was put into a group of people that were basically, they were involved with magic and witchcraft and fortune telling and all kinds of things. And Daniel and his three friends were all with another subject, but they were all put together in that thing. Well, Daniel had specific prophecies or specific interpretations of the dreams of Nebuchadnezzar and his grandson, and so on and so on. And those words are not just fulfillments for that day, but also are for prophetic understanding as we draw near to the end. And every Bible scholar I've ever read agrees with that. Near interpretation, far interpretation. That it's a near vision and a far vision, and that deals with all these things as well. So you're absolutely right. Good. You get a star. Ding. Okay. So what I really want us to learn in this lesson tonight, before my battery runs out, is not my personal battery, but my phone's battery, okay? Is that the promise that no weapon is formed against you shall prosper. In other words, what are some practical ways that could happen? I've traveled to Africa. You know my story, the first trip to Africa. You might not know it, you know it. When I got kidney stones, I didn't know what kidney stones were. I'd never had them before. I thought in my first trip to Africa that I had contracted some very dangerous and deadly African disease, because I didn't know anything.
So dramatic.
It would hurt. It was very painful. They say for us guys that a kidney stone is the closest thing to giving birth, that you would ever know the pain involved with it, but I don't know that because I've never given birth except to kidney
I've
stones.
never had a kidney stone, so I could tell you.
Well, you know.
Past that I'm aware
Right.
of.
So, but the point being that, when I was going through all of that kind of thing, and there was a doctor there who, long story, but he gave me medicine to drink. By the way, it worked. But as I was drinking that medicine, I laid claim to this. Okay, it kind of like Mark 16. Let's look at that, because there again, far.
You passed by.
I did, didn't I? I got excited. Okay, so here's Jesus speaking to his disciples. It says, "Go into all the world, preach the gospel. All creation, he who believes and has been baptized shall be saved, and he who has disbelieved shall be condemned." Watch this. "And these signs will accompany those who have believed. In my name they will cast out demons." Oh, I can't wait to teach this further. "They will speak with new tongues. They will pick up serpents, and watch this, if they drink any deadly poison, it shall not hurt them. Doesn't that sound an awful lot like no weapon that's formed against you shall prosper? So what are some practical ways that we can lay hold of that promise that was from God through Isaiah to the people of Israel and Judah, but also to us in a far fulfillment of prophetic understanding? Almost anything, right? I would not hesitate to lay claim to that and to Mark 16 when it came to taking medicine. How do we know? I mean, half the medicines we take probably have other, well, you've seen the commercials on TV. You've seen them all. Take this, Banarex. I know that's not a medicine, so I can't get in trouble, right? Take Banarex. It will cure your baldness. And as a result of that, you'll have hair on your head again, and that'll be a wonderful thing. And then you have the disclaimer at the end of it. Baltarex may cause a serious rash on your behind. It may cause, I don't know, all those things. And
Hair on your toes.
Hair on your toes, and in some cases, death. That's like the whole thing. I remember seeing a movie that had, where the company was a pharmaceutical company that was featured in it. They were all the disclaimers that they would have and have to keep adding and adding. Some of the disclaimers are longer than the commercial itself. The commercial's 30 seconds. It's another 45 for that. Point being, that's when I would lay claim to these promises. I mean, I would do that for that. I would do it in the jungles. I would do it if you get bitten by a snake, dog, or wife. Anything, whatever it is that...
I was busy listening to the dog, and I heard wife. It caught up to me.
I just said, whatever bites you, lay claim to this. Okay, no weapon that is formed against me will prosper. And in all seriousness, I remember reading a story of a lady named Nora Lamb over in China who laid claim to this promise, no weapon that is formed against me shall prosper, made it personal, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. And she was in front of a firing squad for her Christian faith, and they fired the guns, and not one bullet had touched her.
Is she
in a
related
firing
to
squad.
Lisa Lamb?
I have no idea. I don't know. But she's no longer with us. She's with Jesus now. But her story.
Did the weapons prosper?
No, they
Old
didn't
age
prospered.
prospered?
Well, eventually, because it is appointed unto man once to die. That's what the Bible says.
I don't know her story, so I was wondering.
No, she passed away, but
I was just wondering how.
Her book China Cry is an incredible story to read. Anyway, so I'm not advertising for Nora Lamb or China Cry or any of that. It's just that some of these things, we lay claim to these things. Now, by the way, if you lay claim to a promise that you see in Scripture, excuse me, and it doesn't turn out the way you think it should, it's usually because of another prophetic thing that God says in Isaiah, and I think it's around here somewhere,
No.
but I don't remember.
No.
Yeah, it kind of says that.
I said no.
No, what?
Because it says, my thoughts are not your thoughts.
Yeah, that one right there, right here. See, right there it is. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, my thoughts than your thoughts. Now, I've heard some preachers out there that said, but they're supposed to be. No, that doesn't say that anywhere, okay? What it does say, seek the Lord while he may be found, call upon him while he is near, let the wicked forsake his way, and the unrighteous man his thoughts, and let him return to the Lord, who will have compassion upon him, and to our God, for he will abundantly pardon. Really, really important verses in chapter 55. It's so important. For as the rain and the snow come down from heaven and do not return there without watering the earth and making it bear and sprout and furnishing seed to the sower and the bread to the eater, so shall my word be which goes forth from my mouth. It shall not return to me empty. I just think that these promises, which are near future for the people of Israel and Judah, far future for you and me, need to be read, meditated upon, and claimed as a promise from God for us. Especially as we say, and this says this all through the New Testament, as you see the day of the Lord approaching, lay claims to the promises. My last video, the last show, I talked about fear. There's the fear of the Lord, which is a good fear. There's the fear of other things, which isn't good, can be paralyzing, can cause us issues and problems. How do we overcome fear? Seek the Lord while you may be found. Call upon him while he is near. all of these verses in chapter 55. You want to have the fulfillment of the prophecies of Isaiah in your own life, because that's the far future interpretation of the prophets. Other questions?
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment. When she has questions, we're just going to turn the camera on and we're going to try to answer them. Now, you might not agree with everything that I say. That's okay. Like, what's Israel's last name? Solidar? Isaiah. I'm sorry, Isaiah Solidar. Like he's, whatever his name is, he's good. Okay. And whatever he said, I love what he says. He says, so you might not see it the same way as me, but we can still be friends. That's important, because we should not let these understandings or interpretations divide us. I used to say it like this: you have every freedom in the world, every freedom to be wrong if you want to be. I'm just kidding. I am kidding. We may not see it exactly the same way, but these are pretty general and important promises. These are promises that every one of us should feel good about laying claim to, right?
How do you profane the Sabbath? How do you profane?
Another question in the same video. How's that? So basically, we know that in the Old Testament, the people of God, Israel and Judah, the people of God were subjected to Old Testament laws. Now, Hebrews tells us in the New Testament that Jesus came and fulfilled, watch this, fulfilled the law and the prophets. In other words, he completed them. Everything was completed in him. So you say, well, does that mean that we're supposed to stop keeping the Sabbath? What it means is, you can keep the Sabbath. That means a day of rest. That's a healthy thing to do, and it's something that God has prescribed. But what it also means is that you're not bound to it any longer, because the Sabbath, our Sabbath rest, is Jesus himself. So anyway, this whole thing about profaning it means to abuse it in the Old Testament. Who keeps from profaning the Sabbath? In other words, disregarding it, treating it wrongly, working. They weren't allowed to work from sundown on Friday night till sundown on Saturday night.
I don't know. I don't see how that applies when blessed is the man who does this and the Son of Man who takes hold of it, who keeps from profaning the Sabbath and keeps his hand from doing any evil. But that sounds like, if you're saying that it's near future and far future, how is that far future?
No, these are simple statements. So not everything that the prophets wrote was prophecy. Some things were prophecies, some things were statements. Statements that, now watch, you've got to, again, the context is important. Thus says the Lord, these are instructions, statements. Listen, preserve justice, do righteousness. My salvation is about to come. That's prophetic. My righteousness to be revealed. That's prophetic. How blessed is the man who does this, and the Son of Man who takes hold of it, who keeps from profaning the Sabbath and keeps his hand from doing any evil.
Stop barking at
the bird is not going to eat you, I promise. So these statements, these directions say basically this. God says, if you will, in the Old Testament, remember, it's about keeping the law. So if you will do that, you will have favor with me. We don't want to read so much into it that we're dividing those words up too much. Okay? I mean, it talks about eunuchs here. We don't do that anymore, folks. Okay? I mean, eunuchs were devoted servants of the Lord who had been castrated, so they had no interest in sexual relations with women. And so as a result of not having a libido any longer, no longer having the desire to have women, they could just simply serve God and serve man. And they had, yeah, that's what a eunuch is, by the way. Yeah, so that's a eunuch. Okay, yeah, you can look it up all you want to, but that's what it is. Okay, so again, instructions can come. That's important. There's a reward for obedience, especially in the Old Testament, where you were still living under a system of laws, sacrifices, rules, and regulations that were fulfilled in what Jesus did on the cross. Now, does that mean that it's all you can just do it helter-skelter, you can just do anything you want to in the New Testament? No, that's not it. That what?
Back to the eunuchs. I have another question.
Okay, well, the difference is, though, I want to complete that thought. The difference is that under the new and better covenant, which is what it is called, see Galatians chapter 2, Ephesians chapter 2, and Hebrews chapter 10, under the fulfillment that came through the cross of Jesus and his subsequent resurrection from the dead, we are no longer bound, but rather the law is completed in us because of the blood of Christ. Now what happens is we invite Jesus to come in. He comes and dwells in us by the Holy Spirit, and then he produces fruit. The fruit of righteousness is produced in our lives, not because we get gooder, but because, not a word, but because he produces good fruit from us as a direct result of that relationship. You want to talk about eunuchs some more?
Well, my question is, how come future, whatever, I forget the word, future something.
Fulfillment.
Okay, how come way up, move ahead to the Civil War, you can't cut someone's leg off practically without gangrene and dying? Like, how did they not bleed to death when they were castrated? Like, how did that all work out when...
You know, that's a question that you'll have to ask somebody that knows. I have no idea. There were, by the way, the Bible does have a plethora, love that word, a plethora of surgical procedure and clean procedure that wasn't even adopted by modern medical science until the mid-1800s to the late 1800s. And they were being fulfilled in there. You know what? That surgeons didn't used to wash their hands. They would just do surgery on the next person, right? But in the Bible, it speaks about cleansing before doing things, whether it was eating food or performing a surgery
Like
or whatever the case might be.
Like raccoons.
Like
Cassie
raccoons.
says they dip them in water and wash them, and then they eat them.
Is that right?
They wash all their
They
stuff
wash
in
their
water.
food before they eat it. See, they don't
Raccoons.
trust anything. They don't trust. They know the chemicals we put all over the planet. They know better. They've lost friends and relatives because of that nonsense. So, all I want to say, just so, and I'm going to reach up here one more time. Don't be afraid. It's just my thumb. Okay, there we go. That we're nearing our time because the battery's almost gone. I just want to say this, that when it comes to this great promise, which we'll emphasize again, no weapon that is formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that accuses you in judgment you will condemn. And this is the heritage of the servants of the Lord. I know that it's a promise for you when you trust God. The only question you want to ask yourself is, does God know me? And that's what the requirement is. How does God know me? He knows his family. Are we in his family? Have we received the gift from the blood of Jesus shed for us? And if we have, then we are in the family. He knows us, and now these promises apply to us. Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near. These are extremely important. They had a fulfillment in the days of Isaiah or shortly thereafter. They had a fulfillment in the times of Jesus when he walked on the earth, and they even had a far future fulfillment that comes in our lives today and in the next while. So the beautiful part about the Bible, and there's so much I have to say about the Bible and all that it entails, and who on earth made decisions about what got left out and why. What we have to understand is a living and breathing group of books. Bible is biblios, it means books. And it's living and breathing. So there's always something that is coming as a fulfillment of things. So I just want to... Are you...
Your phone is dying.
Good now? Yeah, I know the phone is dying.
That's
We're
my
not
question.
quitting. We're not quitting because we want to. Right? So we'll charge the phone and we'll go at it again. Okay.
Maybe not today.
Maybe not tonight. Yeah, maybe not tonight. But thank you for joining us. Dr. Dale on deck. Like and subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. Hope this is helpful to you. We've got about 45 minutes and we're glad to have been with you. I plan to do another program tomorrow and maybe we'll delve into a little bit more of this. I like that she's on here with us. Oh my goodness, she can ask questions. I can try to answer them. And she asks some really hard questions sometimes. And are questions that I'm sure all of you have had as well. So hopefully we can get some answers. And if I don't have the answers, I'll tell you, and I'll research it and try to bring you those answers. So God bless you. Have a great night. The pets are going crazy, so we're going to go ahead and take care of that. God bless you. Bye-bye.